Hello. All right, good. I can hear myself. And we are in and we're started. Welcome to another Zeal stream. And hopefully your week's been really good. It's Friday. You made it through the week, and hopefully you have something relaxing planned for the weekend. So today is another Phoenix Elixir slash Phoenix stream. And I am joined again via audio chat with Zan. What's up, Zan?
Hey,
All right, yeah, we're mixing things up a little bit. We're configuring things. We're not going to do the video chat. We're just going to do audio chat, make things a little bit easier, a little bit more casual, and a couple little bit more tweaks to the stream. But yeah, thanks for joining in, Zan.
yeah, no problem. Excited to be here.
All right, so last time we left off with last time we were playing around with the Elixir and Phoenix, and we were playing around with the concept. We scaffolded the Phoenix application, our quotalizer application. Thanks to Dr. Argus for that wonderful name. And then we were playing around with we generated a live view and a live and then so then a live view is the concept of the way I thought about it was server side rendering of content and then pushing the changes of the DOM to the front end where it'll just update on the fly. Is that the Would you describe it that way too, Zan?
Yeah, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a good explanation.
Uh, okay, so let's just start off where we were before. So in order to let's start up the server. So the server was mix uh, uh Phoenix.
Like
I had like the
PHX
PHX.
dot
There you go.
server.
Dot server. Okay.
Yeah.
Dot server is the way to go. So that will bring up localhost 4000 for our application. So we should be able to click on that, open up our application, and see it live. There it is. And then,
Believe that the
ooh, that's interesting. Okay. I just clicked on something.
oh yeah, so this is something that like comes built in with Phoenix where you can see um metrics about your application.
Wow.
I think so like it shows you what version of Elixir, what version of Phoenix you're running, how much memory is being taken up by different parts of the application. There's some tabs up at the top. I think the processes one is pretty interesting. It'll show you all of the Elixir processes that the that your application has spun up.
Okay. So off stream, I was doing a lot. I started reading a book on Elixir. So like now that we've been formally introduced to it and both you and Mati gave me a crash course on it. I'm like, okay, now I'm actually going to dive into this and start reading about it. And one of the things I learned is like, yeah, like Elixir is extremely high performant and like each individual process takes up very little memory. So it's not like Rails where like Rails kind of takes up a lot of memory up front. Elixir is very lean in terms of that, and so I thought that was really cool. So what I ended up doing too to try to test that is the code server. We're using the shared hosted server that we're testing on. I reduced it down uh, by to the smallest instance. So
Okay.
it's only running like on two processes and like 4 GB of RAM or something like that. So we'll see how Elixir performs on that.
Nice.
And then so in my readings, like I just did the very beginning introduction. I was looking at the Phoenix Framework website, and basically I got to around here-ish in the guide. So I thought that was pretty cool. So like I'm like halfway through the formal documentation. Uh, so there's still a lot to learn, but so far I've been enjoying the reading and getting to know Elixir and Phoenix. Okay, so one thing I wanted to bring up was there's like a quote about like Phoenix. Like I think the quote is like Phoenix isn't your application, Elixir is, and Phoenix. I forgot exactly what the quote was, but basically, it's not like because like with Ruby on Rails, Rails is your application. Like you're interacting with the Rails and all the middleware. But hey, Lily. Um, but the concept of Phoenix is just kind of like this wrapper shell around your Elixir application, and Phoenix is just a thin layer to convert it to um, like web lingo for it to understand web talk. Um,
Right.
is that have you heard that about that before?
I know that I've run into that quote before. Yeah, and I feel like it's definitely um, like coming from working with Rails a lot during the day. It's a kind of a mindset change. I think in like application EX in a Phoenix application, um, you'll see the like supervision tree where it starts these like essentially different processes, these other applications um, that are running.
Yeah, and I saw like this graph of like Phoenix, like there was like this picture graph of Phoenix and like or Elixir and Phoenix running different processes, and there was like it showed for like it was for a typical application, but there was like tons and tons of different processes running, and I thought that was like whoa. Thought that was cool. Let me make sure to give you terminal access to
Okay.
some of the other terminals so we can have more things going on in the background if we want to, like running that script, for instance.
Oh yeah. I will. Well, so I think where did we leave off? I think last time um, we had started a live view and we were having actually like within that live view, we
Yeah,
were generating new events every second.
yeah,
Yeah, quotes live, I think is it.
yeah. So if we wanted to, so in Rails, typically when we're not sure where a view lives, you can run routes, right? So you can run like
Right.
Rails routes or rake routes. Um, in Phoenix, the I would imagine we have the same type of mechanism too.
I think there is definitely one. I can't say that I've used it. It looks like we might be able to do mix phx.routes.
Mix phx dot routes. No.
Not the right name. Let's see.
Let's see. If I do mix help, and then let's just do a grep for route. Nothing. Okay. Just a shot in the dark out of curiosity since let's see. Let's see about routing. Examining routes. Is there any oh yeah, there is a mix phx routes command. That's strange that oh wait, I'm not in the freaking project. That's why.
Oh,
There we go. There we go. Okay, now we can see all our routes. So there's our dashboard that we were just looking at, and then we have our slash quotes. So our live view page is for quotes is slash quotes. Okay. So if we go to slash quotes, we'll get this. And then this is our script, right?
actually, this is if you look
Oh,
at
that's
the
right.
quotes live in the when we mount that view, we set off a timer that's just generating an event once every second.
Yeah, okay. I remember. So this is like sending through little HTML snippets to inject in. And I know Mati was like, "Yeah, you should totally check out the WebSockets thing or listen to this." Let's see.
actually have not done that.
So here's the WebSocket coming in. Oh yeah, you can see the the diff, and then you can see like the new content coming in, or all the content coming in through the over the WebSocket. So this is what we were trying to get to at the end of the stream. But yeah, now that we're running this locally, we can actually see it. Okay, that's cool. Nice. All right. But before we go into creating the application or working on it some more, one of the first snags we came across when we were working on our Phoenix application was the fact that we didn't have Postgres installed, and Phoenix was looking for Postgres in order to start up. So we did a shortcut in, I believe, Quotalizer and the application settings. Um, so these are all the so this is all the what's the term for these not packages,
Applications, like modules.
modules, yeah, or what's the what's the add-on term for it's not like packages in Phoenix, they're called something else, I forget, but anyway, they're like modules. So we commented out this Quotalizer repo module that is from when my reading, a repo is just an interface to the database. So they make it very explicit versus Rails, that because Rails it almost kind of obfuscates the idea of the database, like you just have models, but then and based off my readings, they really want to make it obvious that a repo is just a connector and translator from into the database is what I read it as. So we comment this out to get the application to work, because when I try to start the Ecto repo, it would just completely kind of like fizzle out. So now that we're going to comp this in, and and I like to use Docker for all my dependencies. So I created a Docker Compose file to start up a Postgres database. So no need to, hey, thank you very much for that follow, Trevor, Trevor Yarge. Thank you very much for that follow, Trevor. But I created the Docker Compose file to boot up a Postgres image instead of having to install it locally. Instead, it would just go and fetch that image from the Docker images and then start it up and expose the port to localhost 5432, and then get it running. So let me do that, and then we can try to get hopefully this will help us get our database up and running in a Phoenix without any sort of blockers, or having to like monkey patch it by just disabling the repo. Uh, so we were talking about this just before stream, but if we wanted to, so just like with Rails, when you start an application and you need to create the database itself, and that's usually in Rails, it's Rails DB setup or DB create. In Phoenix, it was like mix phx, and then
Actually, so these commands are going to be namespaced not with PHX, but with Ecto.
oh,
Um,
because
yeah,
that's the package we're using. Ecto is like
to
the
talk to Postgres.
okay, and
Yeah.
then Ecto create, I think it was.
Yep. hmm
Okay,
And that'll create the database, and then once we
let's see.
do that, oh,
User Postgres.
oh no.
Oh no. I wonder if because we didn't create the database? Is there like a password or anything that you have to set for permissions for
I have not had to before, but I've also always used it with like with a Postgres that I already had used with other projects. So I know I had like the
Uh,
users set up. It might be um, hmm,
yeah,
we either
that's
need to set up a user and password on that Postgres, or maybe there's a way we can pass flags with mix ecto create.
yeah. Let's see. Let's look at the documentation. So let's see. So up and running. We'll start out with up and running, and let's see. Ecto. If I can spell ecto correctly. Oh, you can actually just tell it no ecto when you generate the application.
Good to know.
So let's see. So once the dependency is installed, task Phoenix assumes that you're using Postgres SQL and will have a Postgres user account with the correct permissions and the password of progress Postgres. I don't have that as my configured password. So let's try that. Let's try this again. So hopefully that will set that up with the password. Let's go into here. No. Let's go to the Postgres Docker image. And usually in the documentation, they'll mention, see, like, so there's Postgres password. That's what we're setting. And then default Postgres user database created and the entry point init DB. And that's how you do it in a, let me see about Docker images or Docker, how about Docker volumes? Docker volume ls, and then our, I'm just gonna do Docker system prune. I'll get rid of everything. Yes, it didn't get rid of everything. Get rid of this one. Docker compose rm. And then let's try to get rid of the Docker images. Docker build PG. Docker compose implicitly runs the build, but we should probably do Docker compose build dash dash no cache. Let's see what that. No,
Okay.
yeah, we already have the image. I just want to make sure to get rid of the local cache so that it creates it again. This is the initdb. This isn't correct. Let's try this again. Docker, yeah, Docker compose up. See, yeah, so it's already finding that it contains a database. Yeah, so we have to remove the volume. But it wasn't letting me remove the volume before. Prune. Deleted volumes. Okay, let's try this again. No, it's still letting you do it. Okay. Maybe we'll skip the step if we keep on chasing our tails. So it is mix, ecto, create, right? Oh wait, we're not in the project again. Quote equalizer. Okay. All right, we'll skip this for now then, because we don't need a repo
Okay.
yet. I was hoping that would get us around it, but there's an extra step. Okay, so now we left off yesterday hard coding the interval, right? Where we're just showing hello world randomly. And we wanted to get to the point where we had the uh, that quote generator you created, that quote script outputter, to use that and display those quotes on the slide view.
Um, yeah, so I think I'll go ahead and start that script in one of these terminals.
Yeah, let me kill the
Uh,
Docker thing. Don't need that anymore.
okay.
Yeah, so the script's running, and that should be sending a web request to our running Phoenix server. There it is.
Yeah, and if you go back to the Phoenix server, you see it logging out. And then in our notifications controller that we set up to handle that event, we're broadcasting it using Phoenix Pubsub.
Uh-huh.
Um, we should be able to take this line back over to the mount function in our quote live view. And instead of broadcasting, we're going to subscribe here. And then we can get rid of that last argument. This broadcast takes the Pubsub system you're using,
Mm-hmm.
the like topic or channel that you're publishing that event on, and then whatever message you're putting there. And then subscribe is just to set up, all right, I want to listen for events using this Pubsub system, broadcasting at this topic.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to comment out the timer that we were running before.
Cool.
And then
Oh, interesting. Our timer's still running. Oh wait, we haven't saved it yet.
oh
That's
no,
all.
I think it's the script. Like we're receiving requests every 1 second. Or is
Oh.
it still showing? Oh, it's still showing up there. Oh, I think that might be because I think if you reload the page, that's the only time that it calls the mount
Yeah.
function. All
Okay.
right, let's see.
There you go. Yeah, so it's not running anymore. Okay. So we subscribe to it, and then and then it's supposed to handle that method, because I see the subscription. So how do you handle that subscription?
Right. So the handle info should be called each time there is an event published there.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. Oh, so I believe we should, this is the event name. Let me look at the notifications controller. Um,
Let's see.
so it looks like in the logging, it looks like the event is just an atom. Um,
Mhm.
Let me actually, I'm going to comment out the log here and go back to this controller. I'm going to log it out here.
Yeah, just wrap it so you can see what the heck.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just was it this like a hash with the all the
So,
properties?
so that's what I'm expecting that hash to, so I'm going to remove these logs, the notifications controller, in back in this quotes live file. The event should actually be, um, should be that hash. See. I'm gonna try to pull a key off of that. I don't think it'll work though, because it looks like it's just an atom. Let's see, the shape of that quote JSON should have a key called quote that actually has the message we're looking for. All right, didn't like that.
Well, well, looks like it's logging the quote now.
Oh, it is logging the quote.
Yeah, looks like it's logging it twice, interestingly enough. Oh, it's probably logging it twice because we both had that page open, huh?
Oh, yes, I think you're right. When someone
That,
connects, it creates two separate instances of this live view, or
yeah.
rather, it creates however many instances as people you have connected.
Okay, that's cool.
Um, yeah. Okay. Cool. So it's working now. I'm not sure why. It seemed like it was maybe like still running some old code because uh, previously, when we were running that timer,
Yeah,
we had been emitting an event that was just an atom called thing, and then at the bottom of this file, we had a handle info that was responding to events that were labeled thing.
yeah.
Um, so in any case, it seems like it's working now. So I think um, what we want to do with that is actually assign this quote to our quotes state. You can think of these kind of, if you're familiar with React, you can think of it like props where you're like updating the shape of props or like component state.
Mhm.
All right. So let's see. The socket that we're getting has a key called assigns, and then um, on that, because we kind of set it up as part of our initial state on line 11, we should have an array called quotes. And what I'm going to do is uh, I'm going to prepend this new quote um, using some pattern matching. So what this is going to do is add this as the first element, and then this list of quotes that's already there is just going to get um, spread out into the rest of the array.
Mhm.
Um, and then actually for right now, we'll go ahead and pull that quote key off of there. So we're just creating an array of strings, or rather a list of strings.
Yeah,
And yeah, I believe if we
I can see
look
it
up at the
already.
browser now,
Yeah,
yeah,
I can totally see it. Nice.
cool.
So is it injecting it? It's injecting it at the top because
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the way we wrote this out. We're prepending it, like I said. So that checks out. Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, what were we gonna say?
I don't know. I wasn't gonna. You can go ahead.
I was just curious to see like what like. So now that I know that this live dashboard exists, what other information can we infer about the application? Because like, yeah, about the requests and stuff like that from here.
That is a good question. I would imagine that this. So when we emit these events to that Pubsub system, that Pubsub system is its own application. Uh, I don't know, like I don't know if once the event is emitted, if it's just gone after that, if it like gets broadcast to the system and then lets it go, or if it actually keeps those events in memory.
Yeah.
Um, see if we can find it in the applications tab. Oh, I think the applications tab just tells you what applications are running. It doesn't give you any information.
Let's see the processes. Plenty of processes. Yeah, there's something like something's changing on here, but I guess it's updating every 5 seconds. The quotalizer supervisor, loggers. I think this like the whole dashboard is really cool just to have that you just get for free. This is really
Yeah,
cool. System limits. So it tells you like when you're reaching the limits of your system, which is really great.
I'm curious, like when it says the system limits, where does it say that? System. Um,
Right there on
I wonder
home. Yeah.
what imposes that limit and like if you can configure that. I don't know if that's something that's configured by Phoenix or by the Elixir compiler.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very interesting.
Like does it look at the amount of RAM your system has and how many
Yeah,
yeah, because we're running on a pretty lightweight machine and it's only using 45 megabytes of memory on here. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, those. I guess the quotes are only text, but um, those are just being pushed into memory somewhere right now because we're not actually persisting those.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Uh,
probably could see it, but yeah, you can see the memory slowly ticking up actually. Oh wait, no, wait, 40. So it's at 45 megabytes.
oh yeah, it just went to 45.2.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So you can see it. You can see it slowly ticking up. So we can actually monitor how much memory usage we have going on. That's cool. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. So we have the live views going. I want to yeah just look at the live views again and just get an understanding of exactly what's going on in here. So let's clean up all the cruft in here. So uh, I want to go through kind of like the life cycle of the request and as this goes through the application. So um, the let's see, I forget if it's in. So it all starts off in the application Elixir stuff where it's like there's like this pipe of information where it goes through and it goes through these different layers of what we comment out repo. But it initializes these telemetry, Pubsub interfaces, the web endpoint stuff. So that I think that's oh, okay. I remember what it's called. It's called a plug. It's not packages. They're called plugs. There.
Okay, so yeah, the like middleware
Yeah.
for Phoenix.
Yeah. So it initializes all the middleware so it knows where to send things off to. And then when a request comes in, it goes to our Codalizer web because we have this like web because in the middleware we're declaring that HTTP and HTTPS endpoints go to Quotalizer web. So then we jump over to Quotalizer web, um, and we have this module here. And then this module declares a couple different things where how to handle how controllers are handled, um, how views, the templates are handled, how live views are handled and where they go, and the layout they use, and other things like router. So it has like all the so Codalizer Web basically is then the web portion of our application and everything that's orchestrated from there. And so when a request comes in, it goes into the router. and the router is in the Phoenix Quantilizer Web router. But here's let me look at endpoint real quick. Okay, this is just a bunch of plugs for handling the requests. I'll close that because that's a little over my head. Uh, so we go to the router, and then the router does. So there is two different pipelines of handling requests. There's browser pipeline, which handles just regular browser requests, and that goes through cores, and then it's a waterfall of different plugs of cores, accept headers, fetch session, live messaging, the layout. So these are like it's very transparent on which layers it's hitting in the middleware. Um, and then since we're doing a slash, a regular slash request, like the root is a slash, and not so it's doing pattern matching here. So at this point, this is where it does pattern matching. Um, and it checks if we're hitting slash or slash API. We're hitting slash, and then it goes into here. And then since we're hitting the regular slash and not slash API, it's like, okay, use the browser the browser pipeline of handling all these handling the requests, and then from there it does another pattern matching based off of the routes. And I guess for us, we're not rendering a static page. We're rendering a live page. So this part I'm not familiar with. If this was a static page, what do you know the keyword that would be used?
I don't know. Like, I think usually when you're setting up routes here, you're setting up HTTP methods, or you're
Hmm.
adding HTTP methods. So, like, if you look down at our API one, when I
Yeah,
set up that controller to take events from the script that we're running in the background, I said, if it's a post request at this URL, then it's going to hit this method on this controller.
yeah,
Um, so I'm actually not 100% sure. I mean, one thing about Live is that it's setting up a WebSocket.
yeah,
Um, but I'm not. I believe there are other ways to set up WebSockets not using Live View in Phoenix. So I think that
resources. I think that's the what I there's the concept of resources, just like with Rails. Um, I'm looking at the documentation. Um, so if you wanted to set up that a module that handled like index requests, posts, shows, and all that type of stuff, and you would set up a resource or resources, and you point to the controller, and then that will um, look for all those corresponding uh, method definitions in there.
right.
Yeah, okay. And then live is the other one. Okay. So then we're telling it live and slash quotes, and then it goes to our controller, or in this case, our quotes live. Wonder why it did this index. But if we go to quotes live, I don't have IntelliSense, so and then here's our quotes live module, and then we're in here, and then it just does its thing from here, where we mount when someone does a request. I assume every time someone does a request, it sets up a brand new socket and it calls the mount call, and then handle info. So handle info is our method that gets called when we're subscribing, and then rendering, and then it calls the render method whenever our state changes for our socket changes.
One more time.
It knows to call render in our quotes live um, controller because we're mutating the socket
Yeah.
data. Okay.
And I think there's like different ways that you can update that socket, but I think similarly to React, whenever that socket state updates, it's going to recall the render method.
Okay. One thing I thought that was
Um,
interesting about when I was reading about Phoenix is like, at least for the static views, Phoenix ends up, even if you write them in a separate like HTML LEEX file, it compiles that down and converts that into, I guess, kind of like with the React, and compiles that and converts that into Elixir code so that it so that they're kind of like static and they're just functions that are executed in Elixir, which makes it extremely fast to render the code because it's not actually going and fetching that template file and then trying to execute on it. Instead, it's all within Elixir. It compiles it into Elixir and just outputs that. So another interesting thing that I guess for optimization.
yeah.
um, so is there anything else you want to try to do with this our quote generator application?
Um, I mean, I think we could go like two different ways. If we want to do it without the database, we could maybe um, allow for taking like an author or a category param in the URL. And then when you connect to the live view at that route, it's going to filter what quotes you're seeing based on that.
Yeah.
Um, Another option is that if we did want to try to get the Postgres running, we could start to actually like create posts and authors based on those events and have some persisted state. So I think either of those directions might be interesting.
Yeah, let's try to get the Postgres stuff up and running again. Let me see. So, gotta remember how to delete an image now. rm Postgres. So Docker, oops. So Docker rm Postgres. No such container. Let's see, containers. List of containers. Do we have any containers? Let's do Docker ls. Why did it give me the option to? Okay, Docker container. Let's go. Let me go bigger on this command line. ls. That is not the container we want to remove. Docker. So Docker image rm Postgres. Let's try this now. Conflict unable to run Postgres must force. Can I just force this? There we go. Okay. And then no Docker. So we got rid of the images. Let's check the volumes. And so that one was, okay, so that's not the same one. Okay, so I'm gonna try to get this Docker image up and running again.
I ask, looking at the Docker compose, do we need to add a user to the environment?
That's a good question. Let me look at the Docker Postgres instructions again to see if what they say about adding a user. But by default, Postgres user and database are created At the entry point init DB. Postgres database is default meant for user to use by users to utilities. Postgres user. So yeah, there is a property for Postgres user. Good call. So let's try adding Postgres user. And I think in the documentation they just said that for Ecto, they assume that the user.
They assume the user is called Postgres, and the password is also Postgres.
Yeah. Yeah, let's try that. And then is there any other options? We have Postgres user, and then, okay, let's try this now. Docker compose up. And then let's see if that actually worked. Nope. Oh, it can't even see the Postgres server. Maybe that's why too. Ping local host 5432. Let me see if that's it. No, that we're doing it inside the repository or inside the VM. On Docker stack. Let's try doing this. Postgres. I'll call this ecto Postgres. And then I forgot the command that you need to use for exposing ports. Let me go. I might have this in one of my cheat sheets for Docker. There we go. -p. So if we're doing a port, it's -p 5432:5432. Let's see if this is going to work. And doesn't look like that worked. Darn. Let's see, one last time. -p 5432, 5432, and then we were doing -e Postgres password equals Postgres -e Postgres user equals Postgres also. Docker stats. Okay, so we have a Docker image running. Hopefully we can actually hit it now. Yeah, there we go. Got it.
Awesome.
Uh, so let me cancel this, and I need to copy this into my notes. Run Docker locally. Toggle list. There we go. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we ran, and then database quantilizer repo has been created. Nice. Okay. So we have a database now. So now that we have a database, how do we work with a database in Phoenix? I didn't catch that.
Sorry, I'm trying to find
Oh,
a terminal that I can use. I'm gonna kill our server for a second, and just use the #1 terminal.
sure.
So it's similar to Rails for setting it up. I'm going to use a generator. See, I think it's mix gen schema. This is going to set up a migration and also a module for this record that we're going to create.
Okay.
I guess we can create an author. So I believe you have to give it the name of the module and then the name of the database table, and then you can pass it the columns that you want associated with it. I think right now we'll just add a name, and then we can set up a quotes table and associate it with different authors.
Oh, okay.
All right, cool. So now we can run mix ecto migrate.
So I want to take a look at those two files that generated. So I created a quotalizer author ex, and this is like our module representing the the object or the thing coming out of the database. Looks like.
Yeah.
So it has the schema, and we have a name in there, and then timestamps.
So I believe what that does is it adds like a created at and updated at.
Mm.
It's a function that just adds those for you. And if we look at outside of the lib directory and the priv directory,
Mm.
so let's see, priv repo migrations.
Yeah.
There is a migration that was generated. Oh, I thought it would show the additional columns there, but I think it just calls that function. I think that timestamps function just goes ahead and adds created at, updated at, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, So now we have this author available. The next thing that I think we maybe want to create is quotes. Let's see, mix, pgex, gen, schema, quotes. Wait, quote, and this will give it a text field for the actual body of the quote, and then we'll give it, let's see, I want to set up an author ID so we can set up that association.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not actually sure what the syntax looks like for that when you're generating migrations like this.
Let's find out. Those are the types. Validation.
Okay, so it looks like I don't see how to do it when we generate the migration, but I do see how to do it, how to actually change it inside of the migration.
Uh,
So maybe we can just, when we're generating it, say like author ID integer, and then we can go in to the migration file and change it before we run that migration.
mm-hmm.
Looking at my migration to create the quotes table, I'm going to change author ID from being an integer to using this references function. And we're going to reference authors. So it's the name of the table that you're referencing. And then I'll go ahead and rerun mix ecto migrate. Cool.
Okay. And then
right.
in that, so let's see. So we have the quote, and then in the quote, do you have to change what the field is? Because since it references something in that schema, does that stay integer, or do we have to use any special syntax?
No, I think we probably want to say like belongs to author.
It's interesting how in Phoenix the schema for the various tables, or I guess these modules, is represented within its corresponding. For quotes, we have the schema defined in there, and then for authors, we have the schema defined in there. Whereas with Rails, it was all done in this like singular file that is the schema file. So it's interesting how each one of these individual modules, like repo, or I guess these modules, data modules, has the schema built into them, which is kind of nice because you can actually see what what is in, like what are all the columns that you're going to be referencing instead of having to jump to the schema file and searching for it. So
Yeah, and actually, I don't think that there is a similar file. I think like with Rails, the schema file is generated on the fly and isn't actually like when you set up your database. I don't think that schema file is used. It's like a side effect that's generated so that you can go find out things about what your database looks like. But yeah, it's interesting that there is this kind of like schema at the top of each of the I want to say models, because it's similar to a Rails model, but I don't think that that's exactly um, that 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 these are considered to be models. Cool. So I think maybe the next thing is in the notifications controller. We can instead of broadcasting this event, I'm going to comment this out and let's see. In terms of code organization, I'm not sure if this is the best place to exactly do this, or if we, if we had more time, we might want to split out a module for handling this. But I'm going to call something like quotializer quote create quote, and then pass those params.
Mm.
And then I'm going to bring this broadcast with us because I'm actually going to broadcast the quote creation from the quote module when we actually create it.
Okay.
To persist it. I'm gonna get some syntax.
Oh. We lose you, Zan?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I know something's going weird on my computer. Okay. So we're creating the quote. So we're creating the quote, and then let's see. Let me close these files. So for the notification controller, we're calling create quote. Are we overwriting that, or do we have to like? Um,
That's something that I was about to implement.
okay. Create quote. Yeah, gotcha. See the server. Oh yeah, the server's not running. That's why nothing's loaded. So if we were looking up how to do things with the database, to create migrate, users table, a change set.
Change set is, um, I guess the way that I understand it is it's like transformations that you're going to apply to data before you then perform the database operations with it.
Okay.
Um, so like this is where you'll notice that like validation is happening
Mhm.
um, inside of our quote module. We say that these fields are required. And actually, I think let's destructure this a little bit because we're going to have some extra data that, well, let's see what the error looks like, and then we can handle it. We're going to have more data than this change that allows for at the moment, and it's going to throw an error because we're trying to add more.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, looking at this, we're probably gonna have to do a little bit of extra work by checking if the author exists for our quote and then creating that author too.
So my thought is that like from here we receive this and we get an author and we can like send an event to the author module and say like, hey, maybe create this author if they don't exist.
Okay.
Um,
Looks like we're missing one end.
so I feel like the indentation got off. We don't have a do right there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there
Do that so often.
you go. The scourge of Ruby.
um, all right, so I copied over our line where we were broadcasting to the quotes topic before. I'm
Mhm,
actually going to update this instead of just being quotes in general.
mhm.
Um, I'm going to change it to be able to broadcast different events. And how does this work? Do we, hold on, I need to also go look at the signature. This, we'll keep the topic the same, but we can, we'll pass the event as well as the quote
Okay.
itself. Uh, and so you'll notice that we're piping up here.
Yeah.
So when we call broadcast, actually we're also passing the event, which we're hard coding, but we're going to be passing the quote as well. And let's see, repo insert. So we're piping the result of repo insert into it,
Mhm.
and repo insert returns a tuple, which is going to have an atom to tell us if it was successful or not.
Okay.
So assuming it's successful, we'll get an atom that says okay, and then we'll actually get the quote as the second part of that tuple. So
So then we'll have to use pattern matching to look for that okay, and then our whatever event we want to, or I guess the quote. Yeah.
yeah,
Cool. Okay. It's starting to make sense. And then insert repo knows to execute because change set, it's going to return back an atom also that would say okay, and then the data to repo insert.
um, oh, that also reminds me we need to, oh no, we're gonna look at the error when it happens. All right, let's try running the server now and see what we're expecting a validation error from the change set right now because the quote has more data and also data that's named slightly differently than what we're outlining here.
Okay. Same.
Undefined. I thought that I could use that. So I used on line 20 a struct, which is um, a way of enforcing the shape of data. It's like a map, but a map that expects a certain shape. Um, I thought that the struct was actually defined by this module since we were using. I thought that use ecto schema at the top. I was bringing that in. Can I? Maybe I can start with a. Maybe I can start with just an empty map.
Looks like there was an error. Oh, yeah, we got an error coming in. No function clause matching the ecto change set cast 4. And that's and then that's what you're talking about. We're getting more data coming in for the change set than it was expecting for casting.
Mm,
Set cast.
I think, no, it looks like there is additional data that is being passed. So if you look at that error, it's not that that there's additional data in the map. Like we're passing the quote as a map, but then um, there's also an array with our fields and then another a list with our expected fields and then another empty list. What's happening? I know.
It should, Lexun says it should be percent quote and then the tilde, but we tried that before, right? And it gave like a cyclical error when we tried that. Yeah, here we go. Quote open struct is undefined. Cannot expand struct quote. Make sure the struct name is proper.
We need to do this actually outside of the quote module. Like have a separate module for handling the creation.
Mm-hmm. If we did that, well, never mind. What if we built the quote and then pass it into create quote?
You mean?
Just like, because we have the quote data, and then if we try to alias module, quote doesn't exist. Oh, it's saying that you were doing the correct thing, where you were doing the alias. And we got a different error now. Insert is undefined.
I think we need to say use ecto repo.
And then OTP app not found.
Did we ever
Quotalizer
implement?
repo. We should be using the quotalizer
Oh, right,
repo.
right, right.
So it'd be quotalizer repo like that.
Lexon
Just
says
alias it. Alias.
I think we still need the alias module, or we can say alias quotalizer quote to refer to this specifically.
That. No function clause matching quotalizer broadcast. So now we're just getting an error inside the broadcast. Let's see, scroll down. Okay. So we define the broadcast and it just doesn't match up with. So we got here to the broadcast and it's not matching up. So that means we're
It's
properly injecting in the database, right?
no, there's an error being raised. The reason it doesn't match up is because the broadcast we have defined is specifically only going to match if the data passed in the first argument has OK as an
Oh,
atom in that first tuple. And if you look at the error message, we're getting error ecto change that action. Let's see, errors. Text can't be blank.
okay.
Author ID can't be blank. Yeah.
So we have to
Uh,
catch the error condition and just drop it or do something or nothing.
we need to define a function
Yeah.
that can handle that. So we'll say like error, not going to use quote, not going to use the event here. And then we can just inspect the error. Wait, sorry, I think,
We can just do underscores, right?
well, actually, we can just, I think we should maybe return the atom error.
Okay.
We're not seeing the error now, but it's still happening. So I think before we pass our quote to the change set, we need to format it.
And that's because the data coming in is not matching up with the database, what the change set expects.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, and I hadn't thought about this. We can actually make our broadcast functions and this format function that we're about to define private methods. So we do that by saying defp. Uh,
Yeah, if we want to log out the change set, looks and says we'll get the error atom and then change set, and then we can just inspect that if we need to.
okay, so maybe put this back to the way it was. And inside of our error broadcast, we can actually log out that error.
And there it is. So you got a change set error, the text can't be blank, and author ID can't be blank. Nice. Okay.
So for that first one for text, I believe the reason that that's blank is because the key is actually uppercase quote. So maybe inside this format quote, the first thing we can do is I think we can say quote and then change it to text. Return text, and then we need to return. Actually, let's try just doing that and see if it reduces the number of warnings that we have.
Yeah. Let's see. Key value pairs in map get dot text. Oh,
I believe that's what I need to do.
you can't do fancy JavaScript stuff. Let's see. Undefined function format quote. It's
Yeah,
expecting two. I guess we would get the first is the first thing the okay?
no, the first thing that we're getting, because the data that we're starting with is this empty quote struct. So actually that's being passed in as the first argument to format quote.
Yeah. And that's passing in some sort of second parameter, whereas it's arity of 2 it's looking for.
Right. Well, what we're getting is this empty quote struct, and then this. Let's actually rename this to like quote JSON.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, that's right, because it implicitly passes the in the pipe, the things that come from the thing above it will get passed in as the first arguments. So it'd be the quote struct and then the quote JSON.
Yeah, exactly. So this makes me think maybe it would be better if we actually start constructing our quote struct down here, and in our create quote, just start with the quote JSON so that we don't really need a second argument. Undefined function, change set 1. Um,
So what does
maybe,
change set? So change set expects the quote and then the attributes.
right. So maybe we could actually even keep pushing it further down and get rid of the argument here. We can start change set. I'm wondering though, because change set, the way that change set was set up was generated when we ran that generator. So I feel like
Yeah.
there's probably a reason that it's like that. Um, so I also might need to change, I don't know if I'll need to change this key on line 29 since it's also the name of the module. We'll find out. So what do we need to,
So we get this, and this gives us that. So we have to pipe it. So when we pipe the next result, we have to give it both the quote object and both the quote struct and this object as a return. So this has to return back the quote struct and this as two as a return value, right?
I don't exactly know what like data type that return value is though, because it's two separate arguments that are being applied to change set. It's not like receiving a
Yeah.
tuple.
Based off the document, so I'm looking at the documentation, and the documentation has like the example looking like, I'll comment it up here, of this for the change set signature. So the first parameter is the struct and then the attributes. So we could expect that this would be the struct of our
Okay.
quote.
Oh, I wonder maybe if what user we want quote.
And then we're still passing, so then in our format quote, we're still passing in a single attribute. So if we were passing back a value, is it like a map where we do like percent quote? Like if we were quote like this, that's how you do that?
Yeah, so that would return a tuple. See if that doesn't work. Hmm. So I think maybe another thing that we could do I wanted to figure this out with piping, but one thing that we could do uh, is that we could see, we can call format quote like this, and then we can go back to what we started with.
Ah, let me. There we go. So different error. Progress. No function clause matching quotizer quote format slash one. Wait, why? Why is it
Is that wrong?
format quote?
Is there
It looks like it's calling it with the single, just the map.
changing the way the key is defined? Also, maybe it doesn't like it since I'm not.
There. Well, there we go.
Okay, nice. So now we're getting that author ID can't be
There we go.
blank.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what? To answer your question, Luxon, we're passing in a hash with a bunch of data coming from uh, a Pubsub endpoint that contains author, quote. Basically, it has the data that doesn't match up with what our database expects of text and author ID. So we're going through the exercise of mapping that map, mapping that data from the map we're being passed in from elsewhere in the application to um, what our database expects. Cool. So the change set. So now it is false, and and then author ID. So we're passing the text, but now we're not passing in the now we have to format the author ID.
Yeah, and we're receiving um, author name.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm wondering, I don't know how this will work in terms of it being asynchronous, but I wonder if we can call like, let's see, quotalizer dot author find or create, find or create author by, this is a very long function name. And then we can pass it that author name and have it return like, we'll have to do some error handling, but have it return okay and an author ID.
Hmm.
Yeah, so maybe we can go, actually, you know what, before we get into creating the author, one thing that we could do is just not make the author required. And then once we have the quotes being created and kind of everything back to a working state, we can actually add the authors.
Hmm.
Um,
So if we wanted to do that, then we would just remove it from the required array, and then what's going on here? To a repo cause because it was not started or does not exist. That's weird. Should we just like,
oh, we never uncommented it in application.ex.
oh,
So that application has not been started.
okay. So I'll have to maybe have to restart the application.
Yeah, I believe so.
Let's do that then. Okay, cool.
Nice.
So I saw some like spam about connected. Oh, that's live view connection. Okay. Well, we didn't get any errors with the Postgres stuff. So now we have no function matching clause in access. What is that?
So that is coming from our quotes live um, in the live view.
Uh,
We are still trying to read the key. Um, we're still trying to read the key, like quote upper score quote, but now it's going to be quote text.
oh yeah, because we
I think,
changed the way it looks.
yeah, I think we might even need to deconstruct it a little bit more because I think we might be getting, uh, what are we piping into broadcast? Broadcast. Um, oh yeah, we're sending an event. We're sending an event called uh, created quote. So let's see. Looking back over here, let's redefine our handle info.
Mhm.
We're getting a tuple here now, and let's match on quote created. So this is only going to respond if the event that's being broadcast over quotes is quote created.
Okay.
And then we'll actually have our quote here. And then instead of quote quote, it's going to be, I think we can do quote dot text.
Okay. So we can actually see a message that it's inserting these into the database. And I guess I just have to load the page to see if it actually let's see slash quotes. Yep. And there we go. So we're inserting into the database, and then we are then broadcasting that. So the workflow, the way it's going is when the live notifications controller gets a message, we then call we in the for the repo we call create quote, which is over here. That does a pipe and formats the quote. Once we figured that out, passes that to the change set with the new quote struct, and then it goes down the pipeline of validating that, inserting that, and then after it does the insertion, our broadcast listens if it's okay, then we broadcast that out to the quotes channel. Oh, looks like we got one error. Value too long for character varying. Okay. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so we publish that out, and then our quotes live now listens to that and does stuff with that. Cool.
Um, I believe that error that you saw, I think that has to do with like the type of Postgres
Mm,
column that we define probably has a character limit. And
because we
uh,
chose string instead of text.
yeah, um, I guess, do you want to try to start creating authors?
Yeah, let's try doing that. I was like looking at the amount of time it takes for the database to execute because like adding the database time in there, like it's added like a millisecond of time because before we were in the microseconds of of
Right.
um responses to the post controller or to the controller and notifications controller, and then now we're in the milliseconds because of the overhead that the database provides. I'm just surprised. Okay, so now we're creating quotes, but ideally we want to have there's authors for those quotes, and we need to associate we have a table for both quotes and authors, and we want to associate our quotes with an author or create the author and then associate that quote with that author. Uh, is the game plan, right?
Um, yeah, and the reason I wanted to create them first was because we associated an author ID with this post. But
Uh,
let's see, I'm not sure, since it's going to have to make a database operation to create the author. I'm not 100% sure if this will work. We might need to like rearrange how this is happening. Um, but let's go to the author module and define this, find or create author by name. Dodoc, see if there's something like find or create by already.
let's see. Let's see if I can pull this up in any docs. I don't have docs. Let's see if I can download any. Xdocs. Nice. There's a lot of different Phoenix stuff.
Like all,
I'm just looking at my offline documentation tool. Okay, let's see.
okay.
So, Phoenix. Find.
Like with Ecto, you can use that same repo insert function that we were using before, but you can pass an option called on conflict, and if it finds something uh, with that same attribute, then you can tell it how to manage that. Um, so
Okay.
we're gonna bring over, gonna do the same thing we did in the quote module, where I'm gonna alias the author and the quotalizer repo, so I'll have access to those.
Insert on conflict.
This do run into a record that already has this, um, then get and overwrite it. The other option that you can do is say, or the other option they show in the documentation is say like do nothing, which I believe just returns an empty struct rather than updating the
Okay.
current one. Although let's see if we're finding by names.
Let's see.
Also need to pass an option called conflict target. I believe specify like the field or the column that's being updated.
Uh-huh.
Postgres will complain. Actually, I want to leave that out for a second because I'm curious what that error looks like. Compiler error. Author line 23. Effectively reached end of line. I need.
Your brackets are balanced. Oh, curly brace.
Leave it. Oh. The curly brace is needed when you initialize the struct.
Okay. So we're back to everything running. And then are we actually inserting authors yet? Value, okay, so we're getting value too long errors. And insert text.
I wonder, are we calling this from? This.
Now we're getting that small. Okay.
Just a typo that I made.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now we're inserting it, and I believe this is the Postgres error.
Okay.
On conflict to update requires inference specification or constraint name. Okay, so I think now if we pass that option, conflict target.
Okay, so conflict set name. There is no unique exclusion constraint matching the conflict specification. Invalid column reference. We do have the column is named name. Documentation. Wonderful.
According to the Ecto documentation, conflict target needs, it says it's a list, and they're like kind of guide section of the Ecto documentation. It showed that example where it was an atom, but then digging deeper into the documentation, it says a list of column names to verify for conflict. So I wonder if I make this a list of atoms rather than just an atom, that might help it.
That doesn't look like it. On conflict.
It's also, it looks like there's a function find on repo that's just insert or update. Wonder if you still, if we can try that.
Insert or update.
And it looks like it's expecting a change set and then also options. I'm not sure the options. No, I think you can just pass the change set, so we should be good with that.
Cool.
Hey, created an author.
Nice. So
Also,
quotes
tell me
and author. Nice.
if we need to stop at some point, let me know, and I can, yeah, if we need to wrap up at some point, just let me know.
Yeah, if you want to wrap up at 3, which I guess is in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
I think we're almost there, right? I mean, we're gonna get the ID.
Yeah. So let's maybe let's log in. Actually, I'm just gonna trust that the ID is coming back. One thing that we are not doing in quote right now is that we're not handling the case of the error. But right now,
I wish the pattern match on purple. It looks like inserting might give us the whole struct, person struct back.
right. So maybe we need something like
Grab the ID. Okay, yeah.
always
Yeah.
it's either Ruby or JavaScript that's throwing me off. syntax-wise.
So I pass that in, and we pass that to the. So grabbing the ID out of our newly created author, and then we're passing that back, and hopefully, I mean, there's no error happening, right?
No, there's no error. So one thing maybe that we could do,
And it is inserting the ID. Nice.
yeah. Actually, I'll go ahead and stop there in case there's other stuff we want to talk about before we end.
So now we're getting into, so when we started this, I guess we have to next time we'll have to figure out how to do a migration where we convert a column from one type to another. But so we're working on the quote. So we redid our stuff, and now we're persisting. We're taking data from the notifications. We're pushing that to our quote live, or actually, we're trying to save that to our quote, and then our quote. When we're trying to save the quote, it's double checking whether we have an author. We created a method to find or create an author, and then that is doing a pipe to either insert it or update that author, and that gives us back an ID. Then
It gives us the whole author record.
the whole author record, which then we're using a map to only fetch the ID. We're doing pattern matching. Sorry, we're doing pattern matching to only fetch the ID. Let's get used to this terminology now. And then we return that back, so then that can be inserted, passed to the change set, and then inserted into the repository, and then broadcasted it out, which then we would see in our UI here. And I guess the one thing we're missing with this whole workflow here is actually saying who the author was, because right now we're just sending the text. Broadcasting out the text. So before we do a broadcast, we'll probably have to either query for that. I guess we'll have to query for the author and pass that in for the broadcast, or load the association. Like, I guess that's one thing I want to try to play with next is in the quote live loading, because we made a reference that a quote belongs to an author. So here, how simple will it be just to do that reference to fetch that author information and to render that also, because now our quotes are supposed to be kind of like repo structs or something like that. I don't know what the terminology is, but is there anything you want to highlight about the stuff we did today that you feel like is something important or something cool about what we did today?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's interesting, or like maybe in terms of like next steps that's interesting, is what we could do in our live view now is actually start fetching the quotes when people hit the page. So like we have a script that's sending us events every 3 seconds, but in real life you might not be getting data all the time, and you also might want the data that came before you landed on the page and that live view mounted. So we could, like, when the live view mounts, fetch quotes and then also simultaneously be accepting new data into that view. Yeah, and I think another thing, I was actually talking to one of our coworkers, Nate, earlier about about Elixir, and I realized that one thing in working with Elixir that I have and Phoenix that I've noticed is I don't recall running into that many runtime errors. I feel like the compiler fails pretty immediately, so it gives you a tight feedback loop,
Hmm.
and the error messaging is usually pretty helpful. Like I feel like when we ran into situations today, unexpected situations, we were able to find our way through it using the error messages.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems that way. Once you understand a little bit of the error messaging, it's pretty straightforward. You just have to understand the arity and then look at the message in detail to understand most of the stuff seemed like to be around parameter types or parameters coming into the function and structuring our function definitions to properly match on what's being passed through our pipes. Yeah, and then I think the other cool thing we touched on is we were looking at the live dashboard.
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah, yeah, we can see the memory kind of ticking up every single time we. Actually, the memory is not as bad anymore because we're not injecting things into memory. We're putting things into the database. So I think the memory is getting freed up and it's not slowly building.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's staying like at a constant 48 megabytes roughly on the view. So that's really cool.
Well, I think what's happening is I think the fluctuation in memory I would guess is coming from the longer that we have that live view open without reloading,
Mm,
the state on that live view socket, it's holding all. I think it's holding all its quotes in memory, and so each time we refresh, it resets that. Um, so like maybe another thing, like if we continued to work on this, would be to like instead of just showing all the quotes, limit it to 100 quotes,
mm.
and then that would kind of limit the memory of each of those live view.
Yeah,
Um,
cool. Yeah, I definitely want to. One thing I want to try to see if we can touch on next week is using a package in Elixir. So trying to bring in like some sort of, you know, third party package to do stuff. So that'd be kind of cool to touch on too. So you don't have to, we don't, just like with Ruby and gems and not having to reinvent the wheel. I know that Elixir has a nice community of packages and authors to do stuff. So it'd be cool to kind of go through that exercise of installing a package and getting that and using that and yeah, working on an example for that. I have an idea, so I might do some research on my own about that.
cool.
All right. I think that about brings it to the end. It's 3 o'clock. I think that's a good amount of time. And yeah, we actually reached our goal of injecting in authors. We're taking in the quotes and publishing them to the view, and then getting a database set up and putting that and into the database, both the quotes and the authors, and we can keep on building on top of that as time goes on. So yeah, thanks, Ann, for all the help and taking me through all the stuff.
Fun learning experience for me as well.
Yeah, nothing like learning while learning live. So
Yeah.
that's the fun part because nothing ever works out perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
All
right,
right. Talk
I-
to you later.
I'll talk to you later, Zan. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and yeah, and hopefully it was interesting. I know we're both fumbling through this at times, trying to build out stuff, but for me, going through all these, um, you know, I feel like going through the happy path and everything working, you never learn enough, and going through and hitting challenges and hitting roadblocks and bumps on the road, you learn a lot more about the framework and about the tools you're using, because in order to debug those issues, you have to deep dive and understand everything. So I know I'm learning a lot, and my interest in Elixir is growing, and hopefully this stream is helping either um, pique your interest in Elixir and Phoenix, or just solidifying some of your knowledge of what you know if you already use Elixir and Phoenix. But thanks for all the help. Thanks, Lexon, and Sturdy Nut, and Dr. Argus, Lily for coming by. And we'll be back again on Friday at 1 p.m. PDT, where we'll be at it again with Phoenix, and we'll try to build up that application even more, make it awesome. And yeah, so thank you so much, everyone.